You're watching Beyond Market. Welcome. I'm Esther Awuni. Many thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll assess Nigeria's National Action Plan 4.0, which will run from the 1st of March to the 29th of April this year. You can join today's conversation with the hashtag Beyond Market, and you can follow my Twitter handle too, at Esther O. Awuni. Now, Nigeria commenced the 4th National Action Plan on the 1st of March this year as the government strives to deliver reforms aimed at improving the enabling business environment for doing business. This new plan builds on the progress of the first 3 national action plans. Okechukwu Enelamah, Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, joins me now to discuss this. Honorable Minister, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been, 3 years now, and now we're now at 4.0, the National Action Plan 4.0. But before we talk about, because I know that according to you, this one is meant to deepen the already ongoing reforms in terms of how tackling those challenges that are facing SMEs and other businesses. Let's take stock. Let's take a few steps backward. What would you say have been the key or big wins in the last 3 national action plans?
It's actually an excellent question, because at times when you're going on a journey incrementally or step by step, you may not realize how far you've come. And this is a good time to take stock. First, Nigeria has implemented over 140 reforms. And I'll highlight some of them in this sort of trying to point out where we've seen significant improvement. Starting from the doing business rankings of the World Bank, doing business index, which is the rankings of the World Bank, we've moved 24 places in that period. Before then, just put it in perspective, for 10 years we were sliding backwards between 2005, 2006 to 2015 until this government came in. There's something they call the distance to frontier, DTF, which is basically, like how far are you from the very best. We've also moved up in that by 11 basis points, meaning that we have progressed. We are much closer to the very best countries than we were. Before, again, it was moving the other way. Some of the successful reforms that will be immediately evident to the public include, reserving business names, which you can now do within 4 hours. It used to be something you had to do manually, and you had to probably go to CAC and take a lot of time. You can complete the registration of a company within 24 hours now, which again is something that used to take weeks. You can apply for and receive approval for visa on arrival within 48 hours. Again, visa on arrival is something that was brought on by this whole initiative. You can file your taxes online, electronically. Again, this used to be very manual. And you can access what we call the specialized small claims commercial courts in both Lagos and Kano. And this is very important for small businesses because they can't really afford the cost of going to litigation, through the normal channels. So all these landmark achievements happened in the last 3 years under the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd national action plans. That's NAP 1, 2, and 3. Also, the World Bank itself reported that 32 states, because they also rank and monitor what's happening at the state level, and the World Bank itself reported that 32 states have improved significantly in their business environment in the last few years. So I think there's a lot that is going on. And just to make one point, going ahead, we're very keen to get to the sub 100. In other words, before Nigeria started sliding back, 10, 15 years ago, Nigeria was actually in the top 100 in terms of doing business index of the World Bank. And I think our goal is by the end of this year to be back there, which is a very ambitious goal. Now,
for the achievements on one hand, I know that it hasn't all been smooth sailing for the last national action plans. Talk to us about some of those key challenges that you encountered while implementing those action plans.
Yes, so I would say the challenges have been in a number of categories. Let me deal with them in 3 parts. First one is just, it's well and good to improve, but you actually need to communicate what you're doing so that people can buy into it and make use of the services, which is why when people like you invite us, we come, because the message has to get out. The second one is dealing with what I call just set ways of people doing things. So if you look at what we call the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies of government, we would like to see change across board. You may be aware that we have something called the Executive Order 1, which is really focused on this ease of doing business and improving the business environment around transparency, around the principle of sort of one government so that government institutions work together, and also around what we call deemed approvals, which is so that people can get approvals within a set time that is published. You will find that the level of implementation by all the ministries, and agencies of government are not or it's not yet where we want it to be. And the reason is that like we actually need to work with them. So we need more capacity, and within part of that capacity has to come from the private sector, meaning that the beneficiaries, those who use the service, must partner with us in making sure we're delivering the services to them, which again ties back to the feedback loop, the communication loop with them. I think the final thing I would say is that like there are some big, significant areas we've worked on where we haven't gotten the benefits yet, and we are very confident that in this year, 2019, we'll see those benefits. Some of them I'll be talking about. There's some big wins, like for instance, we're working on two laws, the corporate affairs bill, corporate affairs bill, which has to do with basically trying to make sure that what we call CAMA, that we improve it. Company and Allied Matters Act, the Company and Allied Matters bill, which we want to basically revamp and make it a lot better because it was basically passed many, many years ago. We're also doing something called the Omnibus Bill, which is a bill that catches different improvements and turning them into law that we can do that would help people operate better in Nigeria.
Okay, now under the for all the national action plans from 1 to 3, even up until this 4, the key areas of focus have been constant as starting a business, getting credit, paying taxes, enforcing contracts, trading within and across borders. Now, let me home in on getting credit. We know that that's a big issue for SMEs across the board and even regular, bigger, medium to bigger companies. To what extent would you say it's much easier now? Because in the course of this reforms, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of small business owners. The LCC, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, has weighed in on it, and they keep, insisting that look, credit, that there's still a long way to go. That many businesses still do not have access to credit. So, from the PEBEC's point of view, to what extent would you say this is better now because of these reforms?
It reminds me of that great expression that we are not yet where we want to be, but we are not certainly where we used to be. Right? And let me explain what I mean by that. You will see that like when it comes to getting credit, and I agree with them that this is something that is really relevant, right, to small business, and also part of, frankly, even the Doing Business Index of the World Bank, and also part of the objective of this government, of the President Muhammadu Buhari government, in the sense that like we really want to target and help small businesses. Because we think by helping small businesses, you actually help the economy overall. So what have we done? First is that we passed two landmark legislations that support that. One has to do with collateral, where you now can use movable collateral, not just land, right, to get credit. Because in the past, it used to be that unless you had landed property. And as you know, many people really don't have the kind of landed property that may be, particularly for small credit. And then the second one is just having a credit registry, a registry that of the company, so that your credit history can be tracked in a way that can build a credit bureau and a track record. Both of those things are now laws and are being populated, and we're seeing results. The second thing we're doing is using the development agencies of government to basically make credit available. So if you look at just to use one example, Bank of Industry. Bank of Industry has probably given over 500 billion naira worth of loans to across board, of which about 20% or so would have gone to SMEs. Now, the importance of that is that, it means that like at least there's a target, to reach them and are being reached. And he actually has a whole department dedicated to servicing SMEs. That's Bank of Industry. In addition to that, the government's program, the so-called social investment program or social intervention program, basically targets, in effect, the most vulnerable of SMEs, right? The almost like what you might call the micro. At times we talk about micro, small, and medium enterprises, which is why we have funding available for artisans, market women, and so on and so forth. So I think all these programs are helping to improve credit and access to credit for SMEs.
Let's talk about the feedback mechanism of this initiative. How robust would you say it is? And would you say that you get enough or a good amount of feedback, especially from the SMEs, those that these initiatives, these reforms are targeted at to make their lives better? Would you say that back and forth, that two-way channel has been very effective?
So that's something we've been focusing on. I'm sure you're probably aware that we now have an online feedback mechanism or online feedback portal, right, called pebec.report, which is just focused and is easy to access, that, where you can go and register any feedback or even complaints or issues people have, and you will get a response within 24 hours or maybe 48 hours max. And the whole idea is to make sure that like you leverage technology to make it easier. Having said that, we are also trying to create the level of awareness where the actual delivery agencies of government, right, are responsive. Because as you know, best practice will be where people can give feedback directly, right, to the people who, just like what you call basic good customer service. If something goes wrong, you want to have the ability to receive the feedback and respond to it. Obviously we also have the Secretariat of PEBEC. PEBEC is the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. The Secretariat is called the Enabling Business Environment Secretariat. And, we're trying to make sure that EBIS itself, which is Secretariat, is accessible and people can reach them both, electronically as well as, physically if necessary. But I think the most important thing is to keep increasing awareness so people understand that these services actually exist. Right? I was just speaking to one of your colleagues who said when he's using a visa on arrival, he's coming through the airport, he reminds them that this is an improvement that the country is proud of. And generally, people like to be associated with success. And I think we need to reinforce what is going right. And then partner. I'm very big on partnering with those who are receiving the service, to improve the service and to make it better. Because I was, again, telling your colleague that there is a partnership, there's an alignment, right, between the government that wants to see the people get better services and the recipients of the service. And now we're trying to make sure, of course, that the delivery agencies or channels or platforms we have are very much part of that loop. So it becomes a three-way partnership. Okay.
You were talking about, let's go back to the SMEs. Would you say, would you say that if one were to ask the average SME now, in terms of awareness, how widespread would you say that knowledge is?
I would say first, I think one thing that this administration, that's the President Muhammadu Buhari administration, has done is to take the dialogue on ease of doing business, enabling environment, and business sector reforms, to a level of engagement that I'll be surprised if there are many businesses that are not aware that this is certainly what this government is passionate about. It was even a campaign issue, as you know, because this is one of the top priorities, right, of the government. The focus was saying that we want to make Nigeria an easier place to do business. When I came in and I was given my portfolio, which is Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, we actually told the public that we view our ministry as the Ministry of Enabling Environment for Industry, Trade and Investment. And it has been our singular most important objective as a platform and as a ministry. Obviously supported heavily by the president, and which is why he set up the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council or Commission. We can't over-communicate this. This is so important that your question is good in the sense that we must continue to disseminate and get that information out there and engage these SMEs and the business in general as, frankly, partners in this very important objective of.
Okay, so would you say that the lessons you've learned and all that's happened in the last three NAPs has made you better positioned for this 4.0?
I would say definitely. Okay. It's made us better positioned, and that is why in NAP 4.0, which is National Action Plan 4.0, we actually have a very ambitious target. We want to move under 100, right, in terms of remember, this is a moving target. This is a competitive target index, right, the Doing Business Index of the World Bank. And we progressed by 25 points. Then we paused. In fact, we actually stepped back by a point. But going forward, we do want to improve significantly. And we think we'll be leveraging the experience from the last three.
Okay, well, thank you for your time so far. We're going to take a short break and we'll come back and talk in depth on about the 4.0 initiative. I've been speaking to Okechukwu Enelamah, Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. We'll continue our discussion right after the break. To join us again. If you're just joining us, Okechukwu Enelamah, Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, is with me today, and we are discussing the newly launched National Action Plan 4.0, which aims to deepen the reforms that are critical to an enabling business environment in Nigeria. Minister, thank you for your time so far. Now, for the 4.0, that this, like I just said, aims to further reduce the challenges encountered by SMEs and focusing on some key focus areas, like I mentioned earlier, starting a business, getting credit, paying taxes, etc. But can you tell us those challenges that you see that still remain across those key areas of focus?
So first, let me say the National Action Plan 4.0 is going to run from the 1st of March, or it started running from 1st of March all the way to end of April. So it's not typically a 60-day, sort of project, right, where you focus on some particular priorities and you try and get them done. And some of the most important priorities for us will include, just getting to a level of, almost like the way in the private sector you have service level agreements, right, with people on what you promise to deliver.
Okay.
We want to bed that down, with the various ministries, departments and agencies of government. Get into a social contract, even a proper contract, right, with your customers, with our people. What can they expect? And we're just going to make sure we bed that down as part of this 4.0. We also want to make sure we pass 2 landmark bills, like I said. The sort of Company and Allied Matters bill, which basically is an improvement on the existing CAMA, Company and Allied Matters Act, to make it basically a lot of things easier. The last one was passed several years ago, and the whole idea is to learn from all these improvements we've seen around the world and in our own country, and make sure that this bill makes it a lot easier to register companies and to run companies in Nigeria. Because as you know, corporate vehicles are legal persons or legal entities that people use to operate their businesses. Therefore, the easier it is to manage those vehicles, which is what the Corporate Affairs Commission does and what the Company and Allied Matters decree is about, or the Company and Allied Matters bill is about. And then the other thing we're focused on as well is just enhancing the efficiency of the small claims courts. The small claims courts is basically for SMEs when they have disputes, so that they don't go into the cumbersome and more challenging courts, higher courts, which are more difficult. And then finally, we also want to make sure that we continue to improve the systems for visa on arrival, just to mention some of the things. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of partnering with other arms of government. So we'll be working with National Assembly on the bills that we're trying to pass. That's the Corporate Affairs and Company and Allied Matters bill, as well as the Omnibus bill that I talked about earlier. We'll be partnering with the states on things like the small claims courts, like particularly Lagos State and Kano State. And finally, we'll be partnering with the MDAs to render services, particularly Executive Order 1, right, which is basically saying make it easier and faster and more efficient for people to receive services from government.
Now, for the small claims court, is that up and running, or is this aspirational, something you're hoping would, get on track and then we'll begin to see traction?
It's up and running in Lagos and Kano, right? Okay. And those are the flagship states. Okay. And it's just to improve the efficiency and to improve the awareness. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so for, because I'm just wondering, what is different about this 4.0? I know you're deepening the reforms, but what is unique about this particular one?
I think what is unique about it starts from the target. So remember, this 4.0 is the most ambitious National Action Plan yet, because it's trying to move us into the sub 100. And that's something we promised. And I think that's both laudable and challenging. What is also different is that we're trying to pass 2 landmark legislations that will be game changers in the country. The Company and Allied Matters bill, which has not been revised in over 20 years. And then, of course, the Omnibus bill, which is a bill that, frankly, can make a huge difference. The other thing that is different is that it's heavily about implementation. Remember that a lot of work has been done, which, frankly, the World Bank hasn't even reckoned with or hasn't acknowledged as part of its Doing Business Index. And I think, by improving awareness, a massive sort of communication campaign to reach the public and create awareness so that people can use these services. Remember that the most important duty we owe to our people is to provide services to them and to make them aware that those services are there so they can actually enjoy and utilize those services. And that's really what we're focused on in National Action Plan 4.0.
Okay, let me quickly bring your attention to, because I remember I've been having conversations, especially around the issue around the ports, yes, making it more efficient, working with the MPA, etc., talking about surrounding infrastructure and how the whole thing, on the face of it, looks so complicated, and then when you go in, it might even appears even to be more complicated. I would like to hear your perspective on how you're dealing with that. I mean, what those challenges have been, and what we can expect to be different this time around.
So it's an excellent point, and I'm glad you brought it up. So when it comes to the ports, it's also a major sort of objective of the whole Ease of Doing Business initiative and the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to improve access and the efficiency of the ports. And there are both short-term and longer-term action plans, or should I say, initiatives. The first one we're doing is obviously to decongest the Apapa ports, in terms of just making sure that the road network and the railway that is going in there is functional, and then and all the trailers that come to load and offload goods are basically given their own lane, as it were, their own space, in a way that will clear up the place, because it's been difficult. And that work is going on right now, and I'm sure it's an initiative that has been undertaken, not just by the government at the center, Lagos State government, and the businesses, and I think you will see results in this time frame as well, because it's been a thorny problem. But longer term, we want to make sure that we build more ports, so that we're not relying on just the two ports in Apapa and Tinkan. We're also interested in building the infrastructure, particularly rail infrastructure, in a way that it becomes a major way of moving goods out, rather than relying on road transportation. We're also interested in sort of what you might call the logistics around the port, in terms of storage, in terms of the bay areas, and all the other things that you need, right, to make a port efficient. Finally, and this is probably as important as anything else we're doing, there's something called the National Trading Platform, or the National Trading Platform, which is basically a single window platform, leveraging technology so that you are not doing things manually at the port, so that it will basically fast track and ease processing of documentation and processing of imports and exports through the ports. And that's also something that is actually a priority for this National Action Plan 4.0.
No, I get a sense that, as from an efficiency point of view, it might take a while before we actually do get a headway, because some of the things you've mentioned are going to take time. You're talking about roads, you're talking about especially roads, building additional infrastructure. I'm thinking obviously some of these things will take over a year or two, and we may have to wait and still have a good part of that inefficiency still present before we do make progress.
The road network that I'm talking about, there's work that has been done now. There's work that will take longer term. The National Trading Platform, the NTP, or the single window, is also something where a lot of work has been done. We want to complete it in 60 days. So there are some very important initiatives that will bring immediate relief to the Lagos ports, right, that are going on now, that we expect to happen within the next 60 to 90 days.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's, hypothetically speaking, and we do hit sub 100, what next? What happens then?
Then what next? It's a moving target. So we'd like to then get to sub 50. And to get to sub 50, we think that's the target for the second administration, right? In other words, we'd like in the next 2 to 3 years, to progress to, sub 50. Now, this is really, it gets harder as the further you go, because other countries are also improving. But we are confident that, with the structures we've put in place, with the commitment of the people, that once we get this train moving, that it will gather momentum.
I know that obviously with working with this, collaboration is key,
yes,
especially with the private sector stakeholders. Would you say that relationship is robust, is strong enough for the journey ahead? I
would say that that relationship is not only necessary, but the good news is that it's one that I believe is welcomed by the private sector. In other words, just think about it. I don't think the private sector would not want to see business, environment better. And therefore, what is really required is to deepen, the mechanisms of engagement. And that's what they tell us, right? Remember, we engage them. And so I think there's a lot more work to do. For instance, we're trying to expand the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to include more private sector participation. We're basically also working on, at various action levels, or what you might call implementation levels, right? Where we can have almost like committees or forums or groups, right? Working on particular projects that will be government and private sector, so that we own the things together. And all this will be rolled out this year, 2019.
Interesting. So, but are you also, for the feedback mechanism, because I'm particular about the feedback mechanism, does that guide you? In terms of how you either retweak, the reforms, or shift focus to areas, or maybe areas that have been newly identified as more challenging based on the feedback that you're getting? Absolutely.
And the thing about the feedback, by the way, is that it's also the feedback, right, that the World Bank and others measure, right, because they go talk to the users of the service. And for us, it's absolutely necessary that we not only listen, we not only get the feedback, but we listen, and then we make adjustments. And like I said, best practice in this thing is where you are in some kind of, like you said, a partnership, and people that are receiving the service, like the saying goes, it's the person that wears the shoe that knows where it pinches, right? So it does guide us, and we clearly would like to see that stepped up, and we would like to see more I would say, affirmative engagement or more constructive engagement with the private sector, small businesses, bigger businesses, and we plan to do it both at the public level and at sub-levels.
Okay, Honorable Minister, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and giving us a better insight on the 4.0. I've been speaking to Okechukwu Enelamah, Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. That's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of the show on our website. That's cnbcafrica.com, and you can also stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets, and you can follow my Twitter handle too at Esther O. Awoni. From myself and the team, bye for now.